Okay, so this is going to be a little review of a finished module. Okay, so these are lithium iron phosphate A123 style 20 amp hour pouch cells with tabs, and they're full length tabs if that matters to you. Now, one of the aspects of these pouches is that this case, although it does the chemical and minimum requirements of the cell itself, it's not a super durable rigid. It's not like the metal of like a D cell or something like that. Yet the intent or concept behind this, from the engineering point, is that this doesn't cell, and then you have all of that mechanical structure you need on the pack level or the module level, and not at the individual cell level, which allows your individual cells to have slightly less volume and slightly less weight for the same power and energy. Okay, now lithium iron phosphate in itself is a whole separate video, but this is just the assembly. Now, one of the things that happens with this is that you get this little, you can see on the edge here, it tapers where the bag splits. It tapers down and gets thinner. So you're going to have that on the edges anyway. And so I wanted to create a module, so it's a more modular style system that I can then use for whatever other project. And these are this is a finished 3P4S module. So 3 in parallel, and then 4 sets of those 3 in parallel are in series, indicated with black and orange electrical tape for your plus and minus, so you can more easily see that. And we went over in a previous video the cell fins themselves, but this is how it looks when they're together. And you can see, if I block the top, you can see through. See that light coming through? So that's that channel on the side of it, and it's at the bottom as well. It's not huge. I mean, it's, a quarter of an inch or maybe a little more than that. But, so that's going to be an air channel coming up the sides a little bit. And the metal itself acts as a heat spreader as well as structure. And then the individual plates fold and fit together. Interlocking. This then uses interlocking, and then this is like a duct tape. Well, not duct tape, but ventilating duct, like that aluminum tape. The adhesive on it works for good temperatures and things like that, and that's to keep the tensile together. Now, some people have used banding straps or clamps or other things as mechanical fasteners, and that's all fine. But in thinking about it, the amount of tensile strength before this aluminum tape elongates, and I got 1, 2, 3, 4 on each side, so there's 8 there. The amount needed to pull and elongate those, the amount of compression that those can hold, is fairly good. And if there's a whole lot of internal pressure, then oh well. But that does fairly well. It's a fairly inexpensive, easy to acquire, and functional thing, and then then the adhesive holds it in place. And but it's easier to tear, but in the elongation direction I'm using, that direction it works very well. On the bottom is where it's open in the middle. Again, you have that little gap, if you remember from the cell. So the air comes in and it goes around the edges. This isn't an enormous amount of airflow, but the previous testing, the cells were, I know a lot of people talk about, they like to quote the amp hour or Coulombic efficiency, but that's not the energy efficiency. So the energy efficiency on a watt hour or joule basis of these, in my previous testing, was around 95. It does vary with temperature, C rate of charging or discharging, and state of charge. So it does vary a little bit, plus and minus, but it's around 95. So very little, like 5% or so, will be lost to heat and so forth as it is charged and discharged on a full cycle. Therefore, very little gets converted. So out of, say, however much you have, only like 5% or less or so is going to be converted. And then here on the top, you can see to heat. So there's not a whole lot of heat being converted very quickly. But I do want to have some heat spreading, both for heat getting out and heat getting in into winter. Okay, so then here on top, these are two aluminum plates. The bottom one has threads tapped, and the top one is basically like a thick, big washer, except for, so it's spreading the load, but instead of doing it in the circle, it's doing it along the bar of this shape. And these are little Allen screws, so I can tighten them down fairly well. There's also little grooves on the side, if I need to use it that way. And I took one of my Allen wrenches, and I filed down, that fit this, and I filed down the top. So it's a low profile, so that if I had to get in here and disassemble, I can still get to that, and I'm not in risk of shorting the thing above it. Then here are the quick connects for the BMS or monitoring system at the later point if I wish to do that on a cell level basis. And you only have to have one here because that is electrically connecting both the plus of this cell and the minus of that cell is electrically at the same point. So for instance, this one and this one tell me the voltage of this plus and minus cell, okay? If I have one more here, that's 3, then I have this plus and minus and this plus and minus, and then with one more there, I'm up to, say, 4 connections, then you have 1 cell, 2 cell, 3 cells, and then at this 4th one in series, you get 1 there. So it means that you're 1 more. So in this case, it'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 connections to get the plus and minus from 4 cells. So instead of running 8 wires, you only have to run 5, or I only have to run 5. And so that's nice for that. Overall, the finished thing is nice and structurally sound. It's nice and solid. It's not too heavy to do like, one-handed or, whatever as a module size. And the 3P4S, the 3P size, this at a 6-cell point is enough that with a mechanical clamping, I can connect them. And to do 4 or 4, 4, or 8 would require a more sophisticated welding kind of approach. I wouldn't have as much meat left here at the end of the tab. It would be possible, and it could still work, but that's a lot more complicated. So I went with a 3P, and because I also wanted the mechanical fastener, so that if later there is a problem or something like that, this end can all be disassembled. I can take off the tape, I can undo each one of those, they come off, I can undo the mechanical here. They do have lock washers under each one, but it can all be mechanically undone, and individual cells could be replaced, or individual modules could be replaced if need be. However, because it's a 3P, that means that those 3 are going to be kind of a buddy system, and they're going to help each other. So it kind of helps get a more matched pack. The strongest and the weakest kind of average each other out because they're in parallel, and the stronger will help the weaker, and so that kind of averages out-ish a little bit there. So it's not just that that I'm doing 3P for, say, more amp hours or for more power or things like that. The other benefit there is it is possible that an OEM could have, say, 1 cell instead of 3, but to have, say, 1 cell, to have, say, 4 individual cells and have each one of those be as matched and balanced could be done, but requires more stringent controls and larger group size for sorting and so forth. This is a little more forgiving of an approach. And I'm not the only one. I mean, You can see a similar parallel series then configuration in the use the way A123 puts together their own modules. You can do YouTube searches for those videos. And Leaf modules, although they're not A123, they are still pouch cells trying to take advantage of that same volume weight little benefit. And they do the same thing where they have, in the Leaf, it's 2 in parallel and then 2 in series. In my case, I'm doing 3 in parallel and 4 in series. The pouches are a little different, of course, but at least from an assembly point of view. There you go.